Hey folks, it's Nathan, TransMidwife here. I wanted to do a video about an interesting topic, well I think it's interesting, in the kind of trans community. It's sort of an ongoing debate about dysphoria and euphoria, the difference, or whether they're the same thing in a way, and whether you need one or either of them to be a trans person. And it's really difficult because I think the bottom line is that you shouldn't question someone else and how they feel about their identity. You know, they're saying what they are, and who are we to tell them what they are, what they're not, you know. So if someone identifies as a trans person, to me they're a trans person, you know, and I wouldn't think to question it. But let's talk a little bit about the two different things. So dysphoria is the one that most people know about. It's that feeling of, the posh word, incongruence with either your gender, like your physical gender, physical sex, sorry, or your kind of the way that the world treats you and responds to you as if you are a certain gender when you're not. So it's kind of a mismatch, basically, and your brain recognises this mismatch, and at first the brain is acting in a kind of confused way, kind of, oh, this doesn't feel right, this is strange, but then after a while it can kind of create feelings of well, there's disassociation, where you just feel nothing, feel numb, feel empty, and then there are low feelings, depression, anxiety, fear, feeling repressed, feeling misunderstood, not feeling recognised, validated, etc. So many trans people experience dysphoria, but some trans people actually don't. Some trans people either some trans people describe it as more, well, so I'm not saying what they do or don't experience. I'm saying that some trans people feel that they don't experience dysphoria, and what they experience instead can just be a sort of they're not comfortable in certain situations, or they're just more comfortable. Something feels more right in a situation. So for example, the world, the friends, the presentation, the way they dress feels more right in one way than another way, and that's kind of how they find their way to understanding that they're trans. And then euphoria is kind of the other end of the spectrum, where you dress in a certain way. So for example, you were assigned female at birth, but you dress as a male or a man, and this is all loose, this is all, you know, obviously because clothes shouldn't have a gender, but you present as masculine or feminine, and you get a feeling of this is right, this is it's, oh god, you know, gender euphoria is like nothing else I've ever felt. And I think for a trans person, it's because it's new, right? So for a cis person, so someone who identifies with their gender that they were assigned at birth, and the most of the population, so cis people, they always have gender euphoria from tiny, so they are happy and comfortable in their gender, and they feel that all the time, and they put on their clothes and they like their clothes and it feels good and they feel good. And obviously loads of cis people have body image issues and problems with themselves, but the clothes assigned to that gender, for example, make them feel good if they wear the right clothes, you know. Anyway, so I guess that they kind of always have that feeling, so it's not new, and therefore they don't notice, right? So, you know, they might buy a dress that makes them feel good, and they're like, oh, this is nice, and that's gender euphoria, but they don't recognise it as an unusual thing. But for a trans person, the first time that they present in a way that's more in line with their own internal gender, they get this rush. It's like it's like stars aligning and the world stops moving, and you look at yourself and or other people look at you in a different way, and I cannot describe it any more than just like this elation, this lightweightedness that you've never felt before, and you go, oh, oh right, this is the right thing. And you can understand how some trans people would use that feeling to guide them to understand that they're trans rather than the bad feelings, you know? And I think where people get confused is thinking that that you have to hate yourself to be trans, hate your body, and I think for trans people who hate their body, it makes them feel awful and trapped and disgusting and all this stuff, struggle to accept the experience of someone who is trans, who's not experiencing that pain. And it could be a deep-seated sort of, you know, I wish I was like that. I wish I could go through this without feeling so much pain. And I get that, you know, that completely makes sense to me. But it still doesn't give them the right to question that person for not feeling certain things. So, anyway, so I have both, I would say, and I came to being trans without dysphoria at first, or I did have some dysphoria, but I didn't call it that because it didn't seem the same as other people's dysphoria. So it started for me throughout growing up as a euphoria, a joy of dressing as a man and playing male roles in games and things like that. So I had some kind of euphoria, and that kind of took me up that path a little bit. And then as an adult, I got social dysphoria. So it wasn't about my body, and it wasn't coming from the inside, it was all coming from the outside. So where I was being socialized in hyper feminine environments and being responded to as if I fit that environment and as if I was part of those conversations, I started to get the incongruence and the dysphoria and the this is wrong, and it started to cause depression, anxiety, sadness. So I got social dysphoria, but not body dysphoria. So I thought for a while that I was a trans person who didn't have dysphoria. And I just had the kind of euphoric, happy feelings when I put on the right clothes and I got treated in the right way. And then when I accepted I was trans and I told the world that I was, and this is the same for a lot of people, and it's something that surprised me, so I think it probably will surprise the majority of people, but it's actually, dysphoria actually gets worse for most, well not most, but a lot of trans people after they come out and after they change their name. Dysphoria can actually get quite significantly worse, and it can change as well. So for me, I slowly was getting less social dysphoria because I was starting to be recognised for who I was inside, but I was getting more and more body dysphoria. Like, okay, this is who I am now, this is my identity, my name's Nathan. Why do I look like this? What's wrong with my body? Why is my body like this? Why wasn't I born with a different body that would have made my life a lot easier? So my dysphoria came actually at the end. It was kind of like the last thing that completed the feelings of being trans. And these days, you know, I'm sort of 10 months on testosterone. And how am I feeling? So I still get gender euphoria. So for example, my mum posted a lovely photo of me, my mum and my dad having a laugh at a restaurant, and she said something about her son. Mother father and son having a laugh or something like that. And that, you know, that gave me that feeling of euphoria. So I still get euphoria all the time whenever something feels unscripted, like natural and not forced, and like someone's not just trying to make me happy. It's just happening because they see me as male and they're just being normal. I get euphoria then. And then I get quite a lot of body dysphoria and at the moment. And so, yeah, and that's where transition comes in. That's where the medical transition comes in. And yeah, so one part of the debate is, so there are a group of people saying that they don't experience dysphoria and they are trans. But then what tends to happen is they describe a feeling that they have, or it's something, it's usually like, I feel, I don't have dysphoria, I just feel more comfortable in a certain situation or wearing certain clothes. And the response to that is often, that is kind of a type of dysphoria because you are saying that you might feel uncomfortable in other clothes. And then they're sort of saying, no, I don't feel uncomfortable in clothes, I just feel kind of nothing, but then when I put on certain clothes, I feel good, I feel positive. And that's how they're being guided. So I think the trouble with the dysphoria, euphoria, no-phoria debate, and do you need any kind of phoria to be trans, is that people are talking about the same thing and just arguing about terms again. It's always semantics, isn't it? When there's an eternal question with no answer, because people are arguing. I mean, I'm not saying there is no answer, I'm saying people are arguing about the answer and there's always people on both sides of the fence. Why is that? Well, it's usually because people are arguing about the semantics of something, that they're using words, and actually it's near enough the same. Like, so what I mean by that is I'm talking too high. I talk high when I get excited and then my throat stops working. But basically what I mean is, I think that a lot of the people who possibly aren't sure whether they have dysphoria or feel like they don't might have some kind that they just haven't labelled as dysphoria, or it seems like the same thing, but I still wouldn't question them, and it's not our right to question them, and that's where I stand, really. Don't question anybody, live and let live. They identify how they need to, and I hope that they respect how I identify. Yeah, so we don't need to know the answer, and we don't need to question people or tell them that they should have a certain thing to be a certain thing. Although I do believe that, I think that when people are arguing about it, often it just sounds like they're talking about the same thing. As in, I think dysphoria has many faces. It's a many-faced monster of evil. And we all see the face differently, if that makes sense, and it affects us differently. And I guess sometimes when you look away from the monster, you feel the good feelings. I'm kind of coming up with a weird analogy here. I think it has many, many faces, and for some people it's not a scary face, or it's not a depressed face. It's not, you know, but it always seems to still be there in some way, whether it's euphoria or dysphoria. I kind of think of them as one and the same. It's like a spectrum of feeling that makes you figure out that you're trans. But it's okay if someone doesn't want to use those words. They might have a reason for not using those words to describe their feelings, and I don't know why we argue with them. It just seems silly. Anyway, I think those are my thoughts on it, and I really, really hope that I haven't offended anyone, because that's not my intention, and I fully support every trans person or everyone who is exploring their gender, and I'm always here to chat to people. Yeah, so know that I support you, and I hope that I haven't hurt anyone's feelings. And that's just kind of my thoughts on what I've read and what I've seen people talk about, and my feelings. Yeah, I mean, feel free to leave your comments here about your feelings and how what you think about what I've said and stuff, and we can have a talk. Okay, thanks.